Millionaire checks in anonymously at his own hotel, but he has no idea who he'll meet. Hello, welcome, enjoy, subscribe, and activate notifications. The hum of activity at Hotel Horizonte in Madrid contrasted starkly with Eduardo Alencar's life. As CEO of Alencar Hotels, Eduardo was no stranger to the high-stakes decisions and family expectations. Yet, he felt more like a cog in a well-oiled machine than an individual with purpose. At 34, the glamour surrounding his life had lost its luster, replaced by the relentless pressure of upholding his family's legacy. Hotel Horizonte, the jewel of the Alencar empire, had become symbolic of his own entrapment, tethering him to a role he hadn't chosen. Deep down, he yearned to experience this world not as Eduardo Alencar, but as someone ordinary, removed from luxury and legacy. This desire grew until it crystallized into a daring plan. He would stay at the Horizonte anonymously, not as Eduardo but as Felipe Andrade, an unknown guest among many. This choice was bold, if not reckless, for a man like him. Eduardo had orchestrated everything meticulously, ensuring his temporary absence would be explained as a private leave. No one would know that the heir to the empire would be under their very roof, walking through the halls of the Horizonte not as its ruler but as a humble visitor. In the solitude of his suite back home, Eduardo packed a modest suitcase, feeling a curious excitement and trepidation. Arriving at the hotel as Felipe, Eduardo noticed things he had overlooked in his previous, grander entrances. The reception desk, normally a blur, now felt intimate, its attendants professional yet warm. His false identity afforded him a fresh lens, one through which he could observe the operations of the hotel without the bias of ownership. He felt a thrill in the anonymity, almost a defiant joy. No one here knew him as Eduardo Alencar. They saw him as Felipe, a guest without privileges. As he checked in, he could sense a shift within himself, an unspoken challenge to view the hotel through the eyes of its everyday patrons. Felipe's experience at Horizonte was purposefully restrained. He avoided the luxury suites, opting instead for a standard room with a city view. He wanted to embrace the full experience of an ordinary guest. Walking through the halls, he observed the small details, the quiet attentiveness of the staff, the fragrance of fresh flowers, and the crispness of the linens. These were details he had never noticed before. Eduardo found himself marveling at the meticulous care each staff member put into their roles, from the cleaners to the concierge. For the first time, he could see the pride they took in their work, a pride that seemed absent from his own role. On his second day, Eduardo joined the hotel guests at the restaurant for breakfast, absorbing the ambience. As Felipe, he was free from the formalities of power. The chefs, waiters, and hosts moved with coordinated precision, and Eduardo could see that each action, each interaction, contributed to the guests' experiences. His gaze fell upon Luisa Costa, the hotel's event coordinator, who was speaking warmly with a group of patrons. Her presence commanded a rare mix of authority and kindness, and her passion for the job was evident. Watching her, Eduardo felt a pang of envy. She seemed to live with a sense of purpose that eluded him. Over the following days, Eduardo blended into the fabric of the hotel. He became Felipe Andrade in both thought and habit, allowing himself to observe without interference. The more he experienced, the more he realized how much he had missed as CEO. He began engaging with the staff, asking about their work with genuine curiosity, finding himself drawn into their world. Each conversation revealed stories of dedication and resilience, traits Eduardo had often overlooked in his corporate detachment. For the first time, he was beginning to see his hotel through the eyes of those who loved it most. One evening, as he returned to his room, Eduardo paused by the grand lobby window, looking out over the vibrant Madrid skyline. It dawned on him that he had been more captivated by this anonymous experience in a few days than he had been in years of corporate leadership. The shadows of doubt and hesitation crept over him. Had he been too focused on the financial and reputational side of the business to value its human core? Underneath the facade of Felipe Andrade, Eduardo felt a flicker of something new, an appreciation for the hotel as more than just a brand or a legacy. His temporary anonymity became an escape from the expectations of his family, an escape from the unrelenting demands of the Alencar name. But it was also an escape that left him vulnerable to a truth he had long ignored. He felt disconnected, adrift in a world he had inherited but never embraced. As Felipe Andrade, he would have to confront the uncomfortable reality that his purpose as Eduardo Alencar might lie not in legacy alone, but in discovering the soul of the hotel itself. Days passed as Eduardo, now Felipe, became increasingly immersed in his anonymous stay at Hotel Horizonte. His daily interactions with the staff and guests brought him closer to a side of hospitality he had never truly known. Beneath the luxury and elegance, he saw how the hotel's essence was formed not by the Alencar name, but by the people who filled its halls and served its guests. Eduardo, however, couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease as fragments of his past echoed back to him in unexpected moments. As he shared conversations with the staff, he was reminded of his early days as a young, ambitious heir to the Alencar empire, driven by idealism and excitement. That ambition had been polished away over time, replaced by routine and a sense of duty. One evening, Felipe found himself speaking with Manuel, a seasoned concierge who had worked at the Horizonte for nearly as long as Eduardo could remember. Manuel's tales of past guests and historic events at the hotel captivated Felipe. He listened, intrigued by how passionately Manuel described the hotel's legacy, woven through years of dedicated service. A subtle pride glimmered in Manuel's eyes, a pride Eduardo had never fully felt himself. Manuel spoke of the late founder, Eduardo's grandfather, with reverence. His words painted a portrait of a man who built the Alencar hotels with a vision rooted in genuine hospitality, not in corporate strategy. Eduardo felt a pang of nostalgia and a faint yearning to live up to that legacy, something he had lost in the responsibilities of his role. Eduardo's thoughts drifted back to his own father, a man who had succeeded his grandfather with a different, perhaps harsher, approach. The Alencar brand grew under his leadership, but so did the distance between the family and the people working at the hotels. Eduardo had learned early on that his father valued expansion over community, prioritizing numbers and results above all else. As a young man, he had idolized his father, but as Felipe, he found himself questioning the rigidity of that perspective. The warmth and dedication he saw in Manuel and others at the Horizonte suggested a different, more genuine path, one he could scarcely imagine in his present role. Felipe's stay also led him to spend more time around Luisa Costa, the event coordinator whose passion for the hotel rivaled that of any family member. They shared occasional conversations, and Luisa often spoke of her dreams for the Horizonte. She saw the hotel as more than just a luxury establishment. It was a place of connection, an environment where people could find moments of joy, inspiration, and comfort. Her passion struck a chord within Eduardo. He hadn't encountered someone who saw the hotel in such a personal light in years, if ever. In her presence, he felt his guarded walls slip, and he became acutely aware of how far he had drifted from the human side of the Alencar name. One afternoon, Luisa asked Felipe about his reasons for staying at the hotel. He paused, caught off guard by her curiosity, but his guise as Felipe allowed him the freedom to answer honestly, at least partially. He explained that he was seeking a change, a chance to view life through a different lens. Sometimes, he said softly, we need to step away from ourselves to see what truly matters. Luisa nodded thoughtfully, her expression gentle and understanding. Eduardo wondered if she could sense the weight he carried, the unspoken pressures of legacy and expectation, though he kept his true identity well hidden. In her presence, he felt understood in a way he hadn't felt in years. But the echoes of his past continued to haunt him. As Felipe, he could temporarily distance himself from his responsibilities, but he knew that each day brought him closer to a reckoning. The weight of his legacy lingered in the back of his mind, pulling him back to a role he no longer fully recognized as his own. His time as Felipe had shown him a glimpse of freedom, yet he couldn't deny the looming presence of his family's influence. The Alencar name was not merely a brand. It was an identity, a mantle he could neither wholly embrace nor completely escape. One evening, as Felipe wandered the quieter parts of the hotel, he overheard a conversation between two employees. They mentioned the name Global Stay, and Eduardo felt a jolt of recognition. The competing hotel conglomerate had been on his radar for some time, its ambitions notorious within the industry. Rumors had circulated that they were eyeing Hotel Horizonte as their next acquisition target. The news unsettled him. The idea of losing the Horizonte to an impersonal conglomerate was unthinkable. This hotel, despite his complicated relationship with it, was still part of his family's legacy, and seeing it absorbed into global stage chain would strip it of everything that made it unique. Felipe's anonymity suddenly felt precarious, and he knew he couldn't ignore the threat that loomed. The realization that Global Stay might acquire the Horizonte gave Eduardo a sense of urgency. He had come to Madrid seeking a break, but now he found himself pulled into a battle he hadn't anticipated. His role as Felipe allowed him a new perspective, yet the weight of Eduardo's responsibilities remained. As he lay in bed that night, Eduardo grappled with his conflicting emotions. He knew that he couldn't remain a passive observer for much longer. The future of the hotel, and his own sense of identity, were at stake. His journey as Felipe Andrade was uncovering truths he could no longer ignore, setting the stage for decisions that would define both him and the Alencar legacy. The Madrid sun cast long shadows over Hotel Horizonte as Eduardo, still under his Felipe guise, wrestled with the growing tension in his heart. His conversations with Luisa and his encounters with the staff had awakened a clarity he hadn't expected. For years, he had managed the Alencar hotels with a firm, detached hand, following the example set by his father. Yet here, amidst the people who brought life to the hotel each day, he began to see that his role as CEO was not just about maintaining a legacy. It was about the lives and dreams entwined with that legacy. This realization, though stirring, also frightened him, revealing cracks in the carefully maintained identity he had always known. On a particularly busy morning, Eduardo noticed Luisa hurrying through the lobby, clipboard in hand and eyes focused on her checklist for the upcoming charity gala. Seeing an opportunity to be near her, Eduardo approached, asking if she needed any assistance. She smiled gratefully, her eyes bright with the rush of activity. "Thank you, Felipe," she replied, barely pausing in her steps. "There's 100 details to manage, and I'm not sure I have enough hands or hours in the day." Her energy was infectious, and Eduardo found himself offering to help in any way he could. As Felipe, he had the freedom to pitch in without the weight of title or expectation. He enjoyed this new role, even as he recognized the irony of his dual life. Their collaboration grew over the following days. Eduardo shadowed Luisa as she coordinated the arrangements, from approving floral displays to finalizing the guest list. He saw the pride she took in every decision, her commitment to making the gala memorable. This dedication touched something within him, rekindling a sense of purpose he had thought long gone. During one afternoon planning session, Eduardo found himself opening up to her in unexpected ways. They shared stories, dreams, even personal fears. For the first time in years, Eduardo felt seen not as a CEO, nor even as Felipe, but simply as himself, a man searching for meaning beyond his inherited responsibilities. One evening, as they reviewed the final details for the gala, Eduardo asked Luisa why she cared so deeply about the hotel. She paused, her expression softening as she looked past him, as if seeing memories etched in the walls. "My family wasn't wealthy, Felipe. We lived in a small town, and working here was a dream I never thought I'd reach. But this hotel, it's not just a job to me. It's a place where people find happiness, where moments happen, and I get to be a part of that." Eduardo was struck by the sincerity in her words. She loved the Horizonte not for its luxury or reputation, but for the experiences it offered to those who walked through its doors. Her view of the hotel was entirely different from his corporate perspective, and it stirred a profound longing within him. As the day of the gala approached, Eduardo felt the weight of his deception. Luisa's genuine trust and friendship had become precious to him, but it was based on a lie. Each time she called him Felipe, he felt a pang of guilt. There were moments when he wanted to tell her the truth, to confess that he was Eduardo Alencar, the man she unknowingly worked for. Yet, he feared what revealing his identity might mean for their connection. Her respect, her warmth, they were gifts he didn't want to lose, even if his growing affection for her made it harder to maintain the facade. Caught between truth and fear, Eduardo was beginning to realize that Felipe's anonymity could not protect him forever. The charity gala arrived in a whirlwind of lights and music. Guests filled the ballroom, their laughter and conversations weaving into a vibrant tapestry that transformed the Horizonte. Eduardo moved through the crowd, his eyes seeking out Luisa. She was radiant in a simple but elegant dress, her smile lighting up the room as she greeted guests. Watching her, Eduardo felt an ache in his chest, a mixture of admiration and regret. He knew that his actions that night would have consequences, yet he could not resist savoring one last moment of his anonymous life as Felipe. The evening felt like a culmination of his journey, a chance to step fully into the role he had created. As the gala progressed, Eduardo became increasingly aware of whispers among some attendees about Global Stay's rumored acquisition. His heart sank as he overheard a guest discussing potential changes if the conglomerate took over, speculating on how the iconic hotel might lose its unique character. Eduardo realized that his actions, or inaction, would soon determine the Horizonte's fate. If Global Stay succeeded in buying the hotel, it would be transformed into yet another sterile, commercial entity, erasing the sense of belonging that people like Luisa cherished. The thought was unbearable, igniting a sense of responsibility he could no longer ignore. Just before midnight, Luisa found him on the balcony, a quiet moment amidst the revelry. She sensed his unease and asked him what was wrong. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a world I don't belong to," he admitted, his words laden with the weight of his dual life. Luisa studied him, her gaze both kind and probing. "Everyone feels like that sometimes," she said softly. "But in the end, we all have to decide where we truly belong." Her words struck him deeply, resonating with his own inner turmoil. Eduardo knew that, as Felipe, he had come to understand himself in ways he never could as Eduardo Alencar. But to protect the hotel, and perhaps even his connection with Luisa, he would soon have to reconcile these two parts of himself. As the clock struck midnight, Eduardo looked out over the city, his heart heavy with the decisions ahead. He realized that his time as Felipe Andrade had brought him closer to the truth, yet it had also built a web of deception he could no longer sustain. Luisa's trust, the Horizonte's future, his own sense of purpose. All these threads were now intertwined, creating a complex and fragile reality he would have to face. With the first hints of dawn approaching, Eduardo knew that the next step in his journey would require him to confront the truth of who he was, both to himself and to those he had come to care about. In the days following the gala, Eduardo's sense of urgency grew. The whispers of Global Stay's interest in acquiring the hotel had become louder, and each conversation he overheard deepened his dread. As Felipe, he could observe the impacts of this uncertainty on the staff. People whispered anxiously in break rooms, wondering about their futures and fearing that a corporate takeover would transform the hotel into a sterile shadow of itself. The Horizonte was a place where memories were made, where both staff and guests felt at home, and the idea of losing that warmth weighed heavily on Eduardo's conscience. Eduardo knew he had to take action, but he found himself constrained by his own ruse. To reveal his true identity as Eduardo Alencar would break the trust he had begun to build, especially with Luisa. Yet, staying silent felt like a betrayal of everything he had come to value about the hotel and the people who worked within its walls. One morning, as he watched the staff diligently preparing for another day, Eduardo felt a pang of guilt. They had no idea that the man standing beside them had the power to decide their future. He understood that to truly protect the Horizonte, he would have to step into his role as CEO with a renewed purpose. An unexpected development soon forced Eduardo's hand. He received word from Manuel, the concierge, that representatives from Global Stay were scheduled to visit the hotel in the coming week, under the guise of potential guests. Manuel, unaware of Eduardo's true identity, spoke to Felipe in confidence, expressing his concerns. "They say these executives will tour the hotel as though they're regular guests," Manuel whispered, his voice heavy with worry. "It's unsettling, to say the least. If they decide to buy, they'll tear apart everything we've built here." Hearing Manuel's anxiety only sharpened Eduardo's resolve. He could no longer remain passive. He had to find a way to prevent the acquisition, even if it meant risking his identity. Determined to protect the hotel without revealing himself, Eduardo decided to gather information on global stay's tactics. That evening, he stayed up late, poring over industry reports and articles on their previous acquisitions. The conglomerate was known for gutting local charm in favor of efficiency and standardized luxury, stripping unique hotels of their character. Eduardo's heart sank as he read story after story of hotels that had been transformed into cold, corporate properties under global stay's ownership. The thought of the Horizonte facing the same fate made his pulse quicken with anger and determination. As Felipe, he had discovered the essence of the hotel, and as Eduardo, he felt an obligation to defend it. His research proved fruitful in an unexpected way. Eduardo discovered a legal clause in the original contract his grandfather had signed, stipulating that any attempt to sell the Horizonte required a review of the hotel's current impact on local employment and cultural value. It was an obscure clause, one that had been nearly forgotten, but it offered a glimmer of hope. If he could prove that the acquisition would harm the community and the staff's livelihoods, he might be able to stall, if not outright prevent, the sale. For the first time in days, Eduardo felt a surge of confidence. He was ready to defend his grandfather's legacy. Meanwhile, his connection with Luisa continued to deepen. Her dedication to the hotel had become a source of strength for him, her passion reminding him of what was truly at stake. They spent more time together, sharing moments that went beyond mere friendship. In her presence, Eduardo found himself opening up about his struggles, speaking in veiled terms but sharing his fears and frustrations. She listened with an empathy that soothed his doubts, offering him a new perspective on his responsibilities. But every time he looked into her eyes, he felt the weight of his deception, knowing that his truth could shatter the trust they had built. As the date of Global Stay's visit approached, Eduardo felt the pressure mounting. He couldn't shake the feeling that his time as Felipe was running out, that soon he would have to confront the reality of who he was. His connection with Luisa had grown into something he couldn't ignore, yet the truth loomed over them like a storm cloud. He feared that revealing his identity might cost him her respect, but he also knew that continuing to hide behind Felipe would only deepen the inevitable betrayal. Eduardo was trapped between his desire to protect the hotel and his need to maintain the trust he had built, a fragile balance he was losing control over. The morning of Global Stay's arrival dawned bright and tense. Eduardo found himself pacing the lobby, his heart heavy with anticipation. The representatives arrived, their polished smiles and cold, assessing gazes a stark contrast to the warmth he had come to cherish within the Horizonte. Eduardo observed them from a distance, watching as they inspected each detail of the hotel with the detachment of outsiders. The staff, unaware of the true nature of their visit, treated them as valued guests, oblivious to the underlying threat. Eduardo felt a simmering anger at the thought of these strangers, reducing the Horizonte to nothing more than a business asset, stripping away its soul in the process. In a sudden impulse, Eduardo found himself drawn to Luisa's side. Together, they watched as the executives made their rounds. Sensing his frustration, Luisa placed a reassuring hand on his arm, a simple gesture that anchored him in the midst of his turmoil. "I know change is hard to control," she said quietly, her voice filled with empathy. "But the Horizonte has a strength that can't be bought or replaced. It's more than just a hotel to all of us." Her words struck him deeply, and he felt a surge of gratitude for her presence. In that moment, Eduardo knew he couldn't stand by and let Global Stay take over. He would find a way to protect the hotel, even if it meant revealing the truth to her and the staff. As the executives prepared to leave, Eduardo felt a renewed sense of purpose. His time as Felipe had shown him the heart of the Horizonte, and as Eduardo Alencar, he would defend it, whatever the cost. The realization left him with a bittersweet clarity. The journey that had begun as an escape had brought him back to his responsibilities, to the legacy he was born into but had only now come to truly understand. He knew the days ahead would require strength and honesty, two things he had long shielded himself from, but for the sake of the Horizonte and the people he had come to care about, he was ready to confront his truth. The day after Global Stay's visit, a tense energy lingered in the air. Eduardo, feeling the urgency of the situation, knew he had to act quickly. As Felipe, he had gained the trust of the staff, and this trust would be essential in rallying them to protect the Horizonte. But his biggest challenge remained Luisa, who had unknowingly become his confidant and anchor. He feared the risk of losing her trust once he revealed his true identity, yet he could no longer delay. Every moment he hesitated only gave Global Stay more of an advantage. Eduardo understood that he would need the support of the entire staff to prevent the sale, and that meant forging alliances based on both truth and necessity. Eduardo began by confiding in Manuel, the loyal concierge whose passion for the hotel had already stirred Eduardo's own commitment to the Horizonte. As they stood by the reception desk early one morning, Eduardo carefully chose his words, hinting at his concerns about Global Stay's interest. "Manuel, what if there was a way to stop the sale, to protect the Horizonte from becoming just another corporate property?" he asked quietly. Manuel regarded him with suspicion at first, but gradually softened as Eduardo spoke about preserving the hotel's legacy. By the end of the conversation, Manuel nodded, his expression resolute. "For the Horizonte, I would do anything," he said. Eduardo felt a swell of relief, knowing he had secured Manuel's loyalty. Over the next few days, Eduardo reached out to other staff members, each conversation strengthening his understanding of the Horizonte's place in their lives. The chef, Javier, shared stories of the kitchen's traditions and the unique dishes that had been passed down through generations. The housekeepers spoke of the pride they took in creating a welcoming environment for guests, a task they viewed as both an art and a calling. The maintenance team revealed the countless behind-the-scenes efforts that kept the hotel running seamlessly. Each person's story added to Eduardo's resolve, confirming that the Horizonte was more than just a building. It was a community, a home for both staff and guests alike. But Eduardo's conversations also revealed divisions within the staff. Some employees, wary of the uncertain future, saw Global Stay as a potential source of stability and career growth. For them, the prospect of a larger corporate umbrella meant better benefits and resources, even if it came at the cost of the Horizonte's unique charm. Eduardo struggled with these perspectives, realizing that he couldn't expect everyone to share his newfound passion for the hotel's legacy. To win them over, he would need to provide an alternative vision, one that showed them the Horizonte's future under Alencar's care could be just as promising, if not more fulfilling, than what Global Stay offered. Despite his growing support among the staff, Eduardo felt the strain of his deception each time he spoke to Luisa. Her commitment to the hotel had become a guiding light for him, her words echoing in his mind during the most uncertain moments. She spoke frequently about her ideas for the Horizonte, from enhancing guest experiences to forming partnerships with local artisans and cultural organizations. Her vision aligned perfectly with what he hoped the hotel could become, a beacon of luxury that remained deeply connected to the community. Yet, the closer they grew, the more he feared how she would react when he revealed his true identity. He had to find a way to tell her before his secret became an irreversible betrayal. One afternoon, as Eduardo and Luisa were finalizing plans for an upcoming cultural event, she turned to him, a spark of curiosity in her eyes. "Felipe, I've been wondering, what brought you to the Horizonte? You've become such a part of things here. It's hard to imagine you just passing through." Eduardo froze, caught off guard by her question. He felt the weight of his lie pressing down on him, and for a moment, he was tempted to tell her the truth right then. But the fear of losing her trust held him back, and he offered a half-truth instead. "I came here looking for a new perspective, to understand something about myself I couldn't see from the outside," he replied softly. Luisa studied him, her gaze searching, but she seemed to accept his answer, at least for the moment. As the days passed, Eduardo's network of alliances began to solidify. Together with Manuel, Javier, and a handful of other trusted employees, he started to outline a plan to highlight the Horizonte's unique value to the community. They arranged meetings with local businesses, artists, and cultural figures, aiming to showcase the hotel as an integral part of Madrid's cultural fabric. Eduardo hoped that this would strengthen their case against the acquisition, proving that the Horizonte's worth extended beyond mere financial gain. The initiative brought the staff together, each person contributing ideas and enthusiasm, a renewed sense of purpose infusing their work. But just as Eduardo felt progress being made, a new complication arose. Rumors spread that some high-level Alencar executives were in talks with global stay representatives. Eduardo's heart sank as he realized that his own family might be willing to sell the hotel despite its significance. The pressure intensified, and he knew he would have to confront his role as both Eduardo Alencar and Felipe Andrade soon. His disguise had allowed him to see the hotel's soul, but it was also limiting his ability to act. With each passing day, he felt the dual weight of his deception and his responsibility bearing down on him, an unsustainable balance he could no longer maintain. The turning point came when Luisa approached him with a mix of excitement and hesitation. She had heard whispers of his efforts to rally the staff against the acquisition, though she still believed him to be an ordinary guest. "Felipe," she said, her voice low but intense, "I don't know what your stake in this is, but I want to help. The Horizonte means too much to me, to all of us, to let it be stripped of what makes it special." Her words moved Eduardo deeply, but they also heightened his internal conflict. He could see the determination in her eyes, the same determination that had drawn him to her in the first place. Yet, he knew that his secret would soon come to light, and he feared what her reaction might be. In the quiet of his room that evening, Eduardo sat alone, wrestling with his decision. He had always known that stepping into the Horizonte as Felipe would come with risks, but he hadn't anticipated the intensity of his feelings, for the hotel, for the staff, and especially for Luisa. To protect the hotel, he would have to reveal himself as Eduardo Alencar, risking the trust he had built and the relationships he had come to cherish. Yet, he also knew that without the full truth, he would be unable to truly lead this effort to save the Horizonte. As the city lights shimmered outside his window, Eduardo made his decision. He would come clean, reveal his identity to Luisa and the key staff members he had come to trust. They deserved to know who he was and why he had fought so hard for the hotel they all loved. Taking a deep breath, Eduardo prepared himself for the conversations ahead, knowing that his path forward would be fraught with both challenges and possibilities. The Horizonte's future, and his own, depended on his willingness to face the truth and prove that he could be more than just a name in the Alencar legacy. Eduardo's resolve was firm as he prepared to reveal the truth. He knew that stepping forward as himself meant risking the trust he had built as Felipe, especially with Luisa. The weight of his decision lingered heavily, but he felt that the connections he had formed would only hold meaning if built on honesty. With global stay's threat looming larger each day and his family's possible involvement in the sale, Eduardo understood that the future of the Horizonte and his relationship with Luisa depended on his willingness to be fully open. The moment came sooner than he expected. That morning, he gathered the core group of staff he had bonded with, Manuel, Javier, a few senior team members, and Luisa, in a quiet corner of the hotel's event lounge. The anticipation was thick, each of them curious about the reason for this private meeting. Eduardo took a deep breath, his heart pounding as he prepared to speak. "There's something important I need to tell you," he began, looking each person in the eye. "I haven't been completely honest about who I am." Confusion flickered across their faces, and Eduardo could see Luisa's brows furrow with concern. He continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "My name isn't Felipe Andrade. I'm Eduardo Alencar, the CEO of Alencar Hotels, and the man behind the Horizonte." A stunned silence fell over the group as his words settled in. The shock in their eyes mirrored the weight of his confession. Manuel's mouth opened in surprise, while Javier exchanged bewildered glances with the others. Luisa, however, remained silent, her expression a mixture of hurt and disbelief. Breaking the silence, Manuel's voice was the first to fill the room, heavy with disappointment. "So all this time, you were lying to us? Pretending to be someone else?" Eduardo nodded, his gaze earnest as he tried to convey his sincerity. "I didn't come here with the intent to deceive. I came as Felipe because I needed to see the Horizonte as it truly is, not as an executive, but as someone who could understand the heart of this place. And in doing so, I found something worth protecting, something that I know my family's legacy, and my role as CEO, couldn't show me." Luisa's silence was what hurt him the most. He turned to her, hoping to explain himself further. "Luisa, I didn't plan for this for us. You've shown me what this hotel means in ways I'd never known before. If I'd told you the truth from the start, I would have lost the chance to see this world through your eyes." She looked away, her lips pressed tightly together as she processed his words. Eduardo could see the struggle within her. Betrayal mingled with the understanding they had shared during the past weeks. He knew his revelation had shattered the trust between them, and he could only hope that she would eventually forgive him. Javier spoke up next, his tone more tempered than Manuel's. "You say you want to protect the Horizonte, but what about your family? Aren't they the ones pushing for this sale?" Eduardo nodded, his expression solemn. "That's precisely why I'm here, to stop them. My family may want to sell, but I don't. I believe in what this hotel stands for, and I believe in each of you. I want to keep the Horizonte in the hands of those who respect and value it, not in the hands of a conglomerate that would strip it of everything that makes it unique." The room remained tense, and Eduardo knew he had to prove his commitment through actions, not words. He outlined his plan to invoke the clause in his grandfather's original contract, explaining that it required a demonstration of the Horizonte's value to the community. "If we can showcase how integral the hotel is to Madrid, if we can show that its cultural and social impact is irreplaceable, then we have a chance to prevent the sale." His words resonated, stirring a flicker of hope among the group. Slowly, expressions softened, and the mood shifted from shock and disappointment to guarded determination. But Luisa's hurt was palpable, her silence an unmistakable reminder of the price Eduardo had paid for his deception. When the meeting concluded, she lingered behind as the others filed out, her eyes downcast. Eduardo approached her, his voice soft. "Luisa, I know I hurt you. I can't change what I did, but please believe that my feelings were genuine. I never meant to mislead you." She met his gaze, her expression a mixture of sadness and frustration. "Eduardo, you put me in a position where I trusted you, believed in you as Felipe. And now, I don't know what to think." Her voice wavered, each word like a weight pressing on Eduardo's heart. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away, the distance between them growing more pronounced. "I need time," she said quietly, her voice steady but pained. "You might be Eduardo Alencar, but the person I thought I knew was Felipe. I have to figure out how to reconcile the two." Eduardo nodded, understanding the depth of her disillusionment. She had been his guide, his ally, and perhaps even more, yet he had shattered the foundation of their bond. As he watched her walk away, he felt the full impact of his choices bearing down on him. To save the hotel, he had risked the most important connection he had ever made. In the days that followed, Eduardo threw himself into the plan to rally the hotel staff and local community. He attended meetings with artists, cultural leaders, and local businesses, each gathering focused on how the Horizonte could continue to support and enrich Madrid's identity. Eduardo worked tirelessly, his dedication unwavering, determined to prove his commitment to the hotel and its people. The staff gradually rallied around him, their initial wariness giving way to trust as they witnessed his sincerity in action. Manuel, though still cautious, began to respect Eduardo's efforts, and Javier offered him an encouraging nod during one of their planning sessions. Eduardo was slowly rebuilding the bridges he had nearly burned, but his relationship with Luisa remained fractured. One evening, as he was reviewing documents in his suite, there was a soft knock at his door. To his surprise, it was Luisa. Her expression was unreadable, a mixture of resolve and hesitation. "I came to say something," she said, her tone direct. "Despite everything, I can see that you're trying to do what's right for the Horizonte. And while I'm still hurt, I want to help. I want to believe that the person I saw in you, the one who cares about this place and its people, is real." Her words were cautious, but extended a tentative olive branch, and Eduardo felt a wave of gratitude. They spent the evening discussing plans, brainstorming ways to make the Horizonte indispensable to the community. As they spoke, the barriers between them began to thin, their shared purpose rekindling a connection that had been nearly lost. Eduardo knew that their relationship had been irrevocably altered, yet he felt hopeful that with time, he might rebuild the trust he had broken. The journey ahead would be challenging, but with Luisa by his side, he felt a renewed strength and resolve. As midnight approached, Eduardo walked Luisa to the lobby, his heart lighter than it had been in days. She paused by the grand window overlooking the city lights, her gaze softening. "You've made mistakes, Eduardo," she said, her voice low. "But maybe, just maybe, we can turn those mistakes into something meaningful." He nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude and determination. They had reached an unspoken understanding, a fragile truce bound by a shared commitment to the hotel and, perhaps, to each other. Eduardo knew that the fight to protect the Horizonte was only beginning. But with his alliances solidifying and Luisa cautiously by his side, he felt ready to face the challenges ahead. The path to redemption would be long, but for the first time, he was fully prepared to walk it. Not as Felipe Andrade, but as Eduardo Alencar, a man striving to honor both his family's legacy and the newfound purpose he had discovered within the Horizonte's walls. The days following Eduardo's confession had transformed the atmosphere at the Horizonte. The staff, once wary, now rallied around his vision for preserving the hotel's unique identity. Meetings with local artisans, businesses, and cultural organizations had created a ripple of excitement, and the growing alliance made the Horizonte feel like a community stronghold. The support was promising, but Eduardo knew it was still fragile. One misstep could unravel everything they had built. He felt the pressure mounting with each passing day, aware that the fight to save the hotel had become more than a professional mission. It was a personal quest to prove himself worthy of the trust he had worked so hard to regain. Meanwhile, Eduardo's relationship with Luisa remained complex. Their interactions were marked by a tentative trust, a cautious camaraderie that hadn't fully repaired the rift between them. They collaborated seamlessly on community initiatives, exchanging ideas and refining strategies late into the night. Yet, beneath their professional exchanges, a tension simmered, one that held both the pain of betrayal and the promise of something unspoken. Eduardo knew he could no longer afford to rely on Felipe's warmth to bridge the gap between them. If he were to truly mend their bond, he would have to show her, through actions alone, that he was committed to her vision and to the hotel they both loved. As Eduardo and Luisa prepared for an upcoming showcase, an event designed to highlight the Horizonte's role as a cultural hub in Madrid, their work was disrupted by troubling news. A team of global stay executives had arrived in Madrid unannounced, and rumors circulated that they planned to finalize their acquisition bid by the end of the week. Eduardo's heart sank as he realized that his time was running out. The showcase, once a promising initiative, was now their last, desperate attempt to sway public opinion and prove the Horizonte's irreplaceable value. This would be the true point of no return. If they failed, the hotel would be absorbed into Global Stay's corporate structure, forever changing its essence. In the days leading up to the showcase, Eduardo and Luisa worked tirelessly, orchestrating every detail to ensure the event would be unforgettable. They brought in local artists to transform the lobby into a gallery of Madrid's cultural heritage, invited musicians to perform, and organized panels with community leaders to discuss the hotel's historical impact. The showcase became more than a mere presentation. It was a statement of what the Horizonte represented, a testament to the deep connections it held within the city. The staff rallied around the event, each person contributing their skills and passion, their unity giving Eduardo hope amid the mounting pressure. The night before the showcase, Eduardo found himself alone in his suite, his thoughts swirling with anticipation and fear. He knew that Global Stay's executives would be in attendance, evaluating the hotel not for its spirit, but for its profitability. For them, the showcase was merely a formality, an opportunity to confirm the financial viability of their bid. Eduardo, however, saw it as a battle for the Horizonte's very soul. He had poured everything he had into this fight, and yet a shadow of doubt lingered. Was it enough? He had earned the staff's loyalty, rekindled his relationship with Luisa, and mobilized the community, but he was only one man standing against a powerful conglomerate with resources far beyond his reach. On the morning of the showcase, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Staff bustled through the hotel, adding final touches to the decorations, adjusting lighting, and preparing the event space. Guests began to arrive, mingling in the elegantly transformed lobby as they admired the displays and artwork. Eduardo watched from a distance, his heart pounding as he spotted the Global Stay executives moving through the crowd, their expressions impassive and unreadable. This was the culmination of everything he had worked toward, the moment that would determine the hotel's future and his own. As the event unfolded, Eduardo and Luisa took turns addressing the audience, speaking passionately about the hotel's significance to the community. Luisa's words were particularly poignant, her voice filled with conviction as she spoke of the hotel's history and its role in fostering connections and cultural exchange. The guests responded warmly, their applause filling the space with a hopeful energy. Yet, Eduardo noticed the global stay executives observing with detached scrutiny, their expressions betraying little emotion. The sense of impending judgment loomed, and Eduardo's confidence wavered as he realized how much was at stake. During a quiet moment, Eduardo felt a hand on his arm and turned to see Luisa beside him. She met his gaze, her eyes intense and unwavering. "Whatever happens, you've proven something important, Eduardo," she said quietly. "You've shown all of us that the Horizonte is worth fighting for. That matters." Her words steadied him, and he felt a rush of gratitude, the tension between them easing in that brief connection. Despite the turmoil, her support had remained a constant, her presence grounding him in a way he hadn't experienced before. In that moment, he knew that whatever the outcome, he would continue to protect the hotel and the relationships he had come to value so deeply. As the showcase drew to a close, Eduardo approached the global stay representatives, ready to confront them directly. He spoke calmly but firmly, detailing his plans for the Horizonte and emphasizing the hotel's commitment to the community. He challenged their perspective, urging them to consider the value of the hotel's authenticity and the loyalty of its staff and guests. The executives listened, their expressions shifting slightly as they weighed his words. For a brief moment, Eduardo felt a glimmer of hope that his plea might sway them. But their responses remained noncommittal, and he realized that their decision had likely been made long before the event. In the wake of the showcase, Eduardo's sense of uncertainty grew. The effort had brought everyone together, but he knew that a single event could not change the financial motivations driving Global Stay's acquisition. Exhausted and defeated, he returned to his suite, the weight of his efforts settling heavily on him. The showcase had been his final attempt to protect the Horizonte as he had come to know it, and while it had sparked hope, he feared it was not enough to counter Global Stay's influence. He felt trapped, his choices dwindling as he faced the inevitable outcome. But as he sat in the quiet of his room, contemplating the impending sale, a new idea emerged, a radical, unexpected solution that could potentially turn the tide. Eduardo realized that the only way to save the Horizonte might be to transform the Alencar brand itself, reorienting the company's entire mission to reflect the values he had rediscovered. If he could present a viable plan to the Alencar board that would both protect the hotel and promise long-term growth, he might convince them to reject Global Stay's offer. It was a risky move, but Eduardo felt a renewed determination. He was willing to fight for the hotel on a larger scale, challenging not only Global Stay but his own family's priorities. Eduardo knew this decision would mark the true point of no return. His vision for the Horizonte, and for the Alencar brand, would require a shift that his family might resist. But he was prepared to face the consequences, to prove that a legacy rooted in authenticity and community could stand strong in an industry driven by profit. Energized by his plan, Eduardo reached out to Luisa and the staff, sharing his idea and rallying them once more. Their support emboldened him, and as they gathered in solidarity, he felt the beginnings of a transformation. One that would extend beyond the Horizonte and redefine what it meant to carry the Alencar name. With his newfound resolve, Eduardo prepared to confront his family and the board, ready to present his vision. He understood that this was more than just a bid to save a hotel. It was an opportunity to build a legacy that would honor both his grandfather's vision and the people who had given their lives to uphold it. In that moment, Eduardo knew he had finally found his purpose, not just as a CEO, but as a man dedicated to creating something lasting and meaningful. The path ahead was uncertain, but he was ready to take it, bound by a commitment to both his family's legacy and the future he had discovered within the walls of the Horizonte. As Eduardo prepared to present his vision to the Alencar board, he felt the weight of both expectation and rebellion. His plan to protect the Horizonte by shifting the entire Alencar brand toward a community-focused mission was ambitious, and he knew it would be met with resistance. Yet he was certain this was the only way to protect the hotel's essence from global stay's impending takeover. Standing in his family's grand boardroom, facing the portraits of his grandfather and father, Eduardo felt the gravity of his decision. He was challenging a legacy built on expansion and profit, and he knew this confrontation could alter the course of both the company and his relationship with his family forever. The board meeting began with an air of formality, the room filled with familiar faces, family members, and high-ranking executives who had watched Eduardo grow up. His father, Miguel Alencar, sat at the head of the table, his gaze stern and expectant. As Eduardo presented his vision, outlining the new direction he proposed for the Alencar brand, he emphasized the importance of authenticity, local connections, and sustainable growth. He spoke passionately about how the Horizonte could serve as a model for this reimagined brand, focusing on the hotel's value beyond profit and its role as a community cornerstone. His words were met with a range of reactions, from thoughtful consideration to open skepticism. When he finished, a silence settled over the room, broken by the voice of his father. Miguel's tone was calm, but carried an edge that Eduardo had come to recognize over the years. "Eduardo, I respect your enthusiasm, but this vision, this idea of community and authenticity, is idealistic. The Alencar brand has thrived because we've kept our focus on growth and profitability. A shift like this, it's risky. We're not here to run a charity." His father's words stung, a reminder of the long-standing divide between them. Eduardo felt a surge of frustration, but he remained composed, determined to make his case. Another board member, his uncle Rafael, voiced his agreement with Miguel. "While we all appreciate your passion, Eduardo, we have a responsibility to our shareholders. The offer from Global Stay is significant, and it could provide the capital needed for expansion into new markets. Sacrificing that for the sake of one hotel, no matter how beloved, doesn't make sense from a business perspective." Eduardo clenched his fists under the table, feeling the familiar frustration of fighting against a wall of practicality. But he knew he couldn't back down. He reminded himself of the faces of the Horizonte's staff, of Luis's unwavering commitment, and he pressed forward, countering with facts and figures that supported his vision. As the debate continued, the board's resistance became more apparent. Many of the members were entrenched in their views, their perspectives shaped by years of corporate strategy and profit-driven decisions. Eduardo realized that his arguments, though backed by logic, were up against decades of ingrained beliefs. For the first time, he began to doubt if he could sway them. His plan had seemed so clear when he was standing with the staff and community, but here, in the face of relentless pragmatism, his vision felt fragile. The meeting ended without a definitive answer, and Eduardo left the boardroom feeling both determined and disheartened. Outside, Eduardo was met by his cousin Sofia, one of the younger board members who had remained silent during the meeting. She approached him with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Eduardo, I want you to know that I believe in what you're trying to do," she said quietly. "But you're pushing against something bigger than you realize. This family, we don't change easily." Her words were kind, yet they highlighted the enormity of his challenge. Eduardo thanked her, feeling a flicker of hope, but he knew he needed more than one ally to bring his vision to life. Returning to the Horizonte that evening, Eduardo was greeted by the supportive faces of the staff. Manuel, Javier, and the others had gathered in the lobby, their expressions a mix of hope and trepidation. They had placed their trust in him, believing in his promise to protect the hotel. Eduardo knew he had to tell them the truth, that the board was not yet convinced, that the fight was far from over. As he explained the situation, he could see their disappointment, but their loyalty remained unwavering. They were prepared to stand with him, regardless of the outcome. Later that night, as Eduardo sat alone in the hotel's rooftop lounge, Luisa joined him, her presence both comforting and grounding. She listened as he recounted the board's resistance, her gaze thoughtful yet unwavering. "You've done something remarkable, Eduardo," she said, her voice steady. "You've shown us what this hotel can be, what the Alencar name could mean. But change takes time, especially with people who've built their lives around a different set of values." Her words soothed him, Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of losing everything he had fought for. As the days passed, Eduardo continued his efforts, meeting with individual board members, sharing his vision in more personal settings. Some responded with cautious interest, while others dismissed his ideas as impractical. He found himself caught in a relentless cycle of hope and frustration, each conversation a reminder of the challenges he faced. His relationship with Luisa grew stronger, her support a constant source of strength, yet he could sense her own worries for the hotel and the people she cared about. The tension weighed heavily on them both, their connection deepened by the shared uncertainty. Then, just as Eduardo felt he was gaining ground, an unexpected setback shook his confidence. News broke that Global Stay had increased their offer, sweetening the deal with additional benefits for Alencar shareholders. The board, already hesitant about Eduardo's vision, now faced the allure of an even greater financial windfall. Eduardo realized that his time was running out. If he didn't find a way to counter this new offer, the board would have little reason to resist the sale. Desperation filled him as he scrambled to develop a last-minute proposal that would highlight the long-term benefits of his plan, a strategy that would ensure sustainable growth without sacrificing the brand's identity. The final board meeting arrived, and Eduardo felt the weight of the entire Horizonte community on his shoulders. He delivered his proposal with every ounce of conviction he possessed, arguing not only for the hotel, but for a legacy built on authenticity and human connection. His voice carried the passion of his experiences as Felipe, of the relationships he had formed with the staff and the impact he had witnessed firsthand. He appealed to their sense of family honor, reminding them of his grandfather's original vision. The Alencar name was built on more than profit, he said, his voice steady yet impassioned. It was built on creating something lasting, something meaningful. This isn't just about one hotel. It's about the future of our legacy. As he finished, he saw that some of the board members appeared moved, their expressions softened by his words. But others, including his father, remained unmoved, their faces set with skepticism. The vote was called, and Eduardo felt his heart pound as each board member cast their decision. When the final count was announced, he felt a wave of mixed emotions. He had lost by a narrow margin. His vision for the Horizonte, his plea for a new path for the Alencar brand, had been defeated by a slim majority. The aftermath was a blur, the staff's disappointment mirroring his own heartbreak. The weight of his loss settled heavily on Eduardo, his dream of a reimagined Alencar legacy slipping from his grasp. Yet, as he faced the devastated expressions of Manuel, Javier, and especially Luisa, he realized that his fight was far from over. Though he had lost the board's support, he still had the community, the staff, and his own unyielding resolve. Eduardo knew that while the path had become more difficult, he would not abandon the Horizonte. This was his defining moment, the point at which he would either retreat or double down in his commitment. With a new determination, Eduardo vowed to find another way to protect the Horizonte. He would explore every possible option, even if it meant challenging his family's authority directly. Standing in the lobby surrounded by the people he had come to see as his true allies, Eduardo felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be harder, but he knew that he could not walk away. The Horizonte had become more than a part of his family's empire. It had become a part of him, and he was willing to fight for it, no matter the cost. Eduardo stood in the quiet of his office, staring out over the Madrid skyline, a city he had come to see as home. The rejection of his proposal by the board had been a blow he hadn't anticipated. Despite his best efforts, the allure of Global Stay's increased offer had won over his family and fellow executives. The weight of defeat pressed down on him, and he felt an aching sadness for all he had fought to protect. Yet beneath the despair was a flicker of determination that refused to die. If his family wouldn't protect the Horizonte, he would find a way to do it on his own. His final meeting with the board had left him isolated, and whispers spread quickly that Eduardo's vision for the company was at odds with the Alencar name. He knew that his father, Miguel, would not forgive him for what he perceived as a public rebellion against the family's values. The tension between them had escalated from subtle disagreements to open conflict, each conversation filled with pointed remarks and unspoken accusations. Yet Eduardo remained resolute. This fight had become about more than just the horizonte. It was about finding his own path, building a legacy that honored the people who gave life to the hotel. In his search for an alternative solution, Eduardo began to dig deeper into his grandfather's original vision for the horizonte. He spent hours in the family archives, poring over old letters, documents, and contracts. One late night, he discovered a document that hinted at a legal stipulation in his grandfather's will, a clause indicating that, under certain conditions, a direct descendant could take full ownership of the hotel, independent of the board's control. Heart-racing, Eduardo realized that this clause might give him the authority to prevent the sale. It was a long shot, but it offered him a glimmer of hope. Determined, Eduardo consulted a lawyer to explore the implications of this clause. To his dismay, he learned that enacting it would require him to forfeit his position as CEO of Alencar Hotels. The decision weighed heavily on him. If he chose to protect the horizonte through this clause, he would lose the position he had spent his entire life preparing for. The cost of saving the hotel would be his role in the family empire, his influence over the brand's future. It was a choice between family loyalty and personal conviction, a decision that would define the rest of his life. Eduardo turned to Luisa for advice, sharing his discovery and the sacrifice it would demand. She listened in silence, her expression conflicted as she absorbed the weight of his revelation. Eduardo, this hotel has become more than just a place to you. It's part of who you are, she said softly. But giving up your position in the company, are you prepared for that? Her eyes held a mixture of admiration and worry, and Eduardo felt a surge of gratitude for her honesty. He knew that her support had been a guiding light in his journey, but even she couldn't make this choice for him. The following days were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Eduardo's loyalty to his family was deep, but his sense of duty to the horizonte had grown even stronger. He found himself spending more time with the staff, sharing quiet moments with Manuel, Javier, and the others who had become his allies. Each interaction reminded him of the impact the hotel had on their lives, how deeply they valued the sense of community they had built. Eduardo knew that, to them, the horizonte was more than just a job, it was a home. In their dedication, he saw a reflection of the purpose he had been searching for his entire life. But as Eduardo neared his decision, a new betrayal blindsided him. He learned that his father had already been in negotiations with Global Stay long before Eduardo had started his campaign. Miguel's silence had been a calculated move, allowing Eduardo to believe he had a chance to save the hotel while the sale was quietly arranged in the background. The revelation struck Eduardo with the force of a betrayal he hadn't thought possible. He confronted his father, anger and disappointment raw in his voice. "You knew what this place meant to me," he said, his fists clenched. "You let me believe I had a choice, knowing all along that you would sell it anyway." Miguel's response was cold and unyielding. "The Alencar legacy is bigger than one hotel, Eduardo. We're building an empire. Sentimentality has no place here." His father's words cut deep, and Eduardo felt a painful disillusionment settle within him. The man he had once admired had become a stranger, a symbol of everything he could no longer accept. Eduardo realized that his fight was not only against Global Stay, but against the very values his family had come to embody. A pursuit of power that disregarded the people and places that made it possible. Faced with this betrayal, Eduardo's path became clear. He would invoke his grandfather's clause, sacrificing his role as CEO to protect the horizonte. The decision was both heartbreaking and liberating. By relinquishing his position, he would sever the bond to his family's empire, but he would also free himself to create a legacy of his own. With his lawyer's assistance, he began the process of enacting the clause, a move that would transfer full ownership of the horizonte to him personally, independent of the Alencar Hotel's brand. The night before the finalization of the sale, Eduardo gathered the staff in the hotel's ballroom to share his decision. The room was filled with familiar faces, each person representing the spirit of the horizonte. As he explained his choice, a mixture of shock and gratitude swept over the crowd. Manuel, overcome with emotion, clasped Eduardo's shoulder, his voice choked. "You've given us something that no corporation could ever offer, a sense of belonging." Eduardo felt a surge of pride and relief, knowing that his sacrifice had given them security and a future. But the hardest conversation was still ahead. After the gathering, he found Luisa waiting for him by the lobby window. Her expression was both warm and sad, a reflection of the emotional journey they had shared. Eduardo approached her, his heart heavy with unspoken words. "I wanted to build something lasting," he said softly. "Something that mattered, not just for my family, but for the people who made this place what it is." Luisa nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "You've done that, Eduardo. You've shown us all what true commitment looks like." They stood together in silence, the weight of the moment settling between them. Eduardo felt an ache as he realized that his decision would alter the path he had hoped to walk with her. Yet in her gaze, he saw a glimmer of hope, a silent understanding that their connection was not bound to the hotel alone. She placed a gentle hand on his arm, a small gesture that carried a world of meaning. "Whatever comes next, know that you've made a difference. And that's worth more than any title or position." With the dawn of a new day, Eduardo signed the papers that finalized his ownership of the Horizonte, severing his ties to the Alencar Hotel's brand. The hotel was now his, a place where he could build something meaningful without the constraints of corporate ambition. The weight of responsibility felt both daunting and freeing, and Eduardo knew that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges. Yet for the first time, he felt a profound sense of peace. He had chosen his own path, one that honored the legacy he believed in. As Eduardo walked through the halls of the Horizonte, he felt a renewed connection to the place that had transformed him. The staff greeted him with warmth and respect, their loyalty a testament to the trust he had earned. And as he passed through the lobby, he saw Luisa waiting for him, her smile a quiet reassurance that the road he had chosen was one worth traveling. Eduardo's journey had taken him to the edge of family loyalty, personal sacrifice, and self-discovery. He had unearthed buried truths, faced betrayal, and rebuilt his life around values he had once taken for granted. And now, with the Horizonte's future secured, he looked forward to creating a legacy built not on expansion or profit, but on community, authenticity, and lasting connection. The morning light bathed Hotel Horizonte in a golden glow as Eduardo stepped into the lobby, feeling the weight of both freedom and responsibility. The previous day's decision to sacrifice his position at Alencar Hotels and claim sole ownership of the Horizonte had left him exhilarated yet daunted. His choice had liberated the hotel from corporate interests, but it also set him on a path fraught with challenges. Eduardo knew that the Real work was only beginning, and he would need every ounce of determination to honor the commitment he had made to the staff, the community, and himself. As Eduardo began his first day as the Horizonte's independent owner, he found himself navigating a new dynamic with the staff. Without the title of CEO, he was no longer their distant superior, but rather a partner in their shared purpose. Manuel, ever the wise counselor, was one of the first to approach him. "It's different, isn't it?" Manuel said with a smile that was both knowing and encouraging. Eduardo nodded, feeling the subtle but profound shift. "Yes, it is. But I think that's exactly what I needed." Manuel patted him on the shoulder, his gaze filled with respect. "We're with you, Eduardo. You've shown us that this place is worth fighting for, and we'll make sure it stands strong." The new reality of his ownership, however, came with pressing financial challenges. Without the support of the Alencar Empire, Eduardo now faced the need to secure independent funding for the hotel's operations and planned improvements. He reached out to local investors, crafting a proposal that highlighted the Horizonte's role in Madrid's cultural landscape. His meetings were met with varying degrees of interest. While some investors saw potential in his community-driven approach, others hesitated, doubting whether a luxury hotel could thrive without the resources of a larger brand. Each interaction tested Eduardo's resolve, but he knew that the right partnership would be one that valued the hotel's essence as much as he did. At the same time, Eduardo began implementing the changes he had envisioned, collaborating with Luisa and the staff to shape the Horizonte into a place that truly reflected its connection to the city. They organized monthly cultural events, inviting local artists, musicians, and chefs to showcase their work and contribute to the hotel's identity. Luisa's passion for these projects was infectious, and Eduardo found himself inspired by her unwavering commitment. Working side by side with her, he felt a deepening connection, their shared vision bridging the gap that had once divided them. They had built something powerful together, and Eduardo realized that the bond between them had evolved beyond trust. It was a partnership rooted in respect and shared dreams. However, the financial strain of Eduardo's independent ownership soon became apparent. The initial costs of the renovations and community events were higher than anticipated, and without the backing of Alencar Hotels, he found himself grappling with the limitations of a smaller budget. Late nights in the office became routine as he pored over spreadsheets, searching for ways to stretch every euro. He considered cutting back on the cultural events, but each time he entertained the thought, he remembered the staff's dedication and the promise he had made. The balance between his ideals and the practicalities of running a business weighed heavily on him, but he refused to compromise on the vision that had brought him to this point. One evening, Luisa found him in his office, exhaustion etched into his face. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Eduardo, we've come too far to back down now. The Horizonte has always been more than just a hotel, and that's why people believe in it and in you. If you need help, let us support you. We're in this together." Her words brought him a renewed sense of purpose, and he realized that he didn't have to bear the weight alone. The staff, the community, and even his new investors shared his vision, and he had to trust in their collective strength to overcome these challenges. Driven by Luis's encouragement, Eduardo expanded his outreach, forming partnerships with local businesses and organizations that valued the Horizonte's mission. He proposed initiatives that would benefit both the hotel and the community, such as hosting workshops, cultural tours, and charity events that brought in revenue while reinforcing the Horizonte's role as a cultural center. These efforts began to yield results, and Eduardo felt the tide slowly turning in his favor. His passion and commitment inspired those around him, and the sense of unity that emerged within the hotel was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Amidst the hotel's transformation, Eduardo also began to mend his relationship with his family, particularly his cousin Sophia, who had quietly supported him during the board's debates. She reached out, expressing admiration for his conviction, and offered to connect him with contacts who could provide guidance on managing the financial aspects of his independent ownership. Eduardo accepted her help with gratitude, feeling that while his path had diverged from the Alencar Empire, his family ties remained intact in new and unexpected ways. His relationship with his father, however, remained strained, and Eduardo accepted that some bridges would take time to rebuild, if they could be rebuilt at all. The months passed in a blur of hard work, late nights, and small victories, and the Horizonte began to thrive under Eduardo's leadership. The cultural events became a highlight in Madrid's social calendar, attracting locals and visitors alike. The hotel's reputation as a place of luxury rooted in authenticity grew, and Eduardo felt the satisfaction of seeing his vision come to life. Each guest who walked through the doors, each artist who shared their work, and each staff member who brought their passion to their role reminded him of why he had fought so hard to protect the hotel. One evening, after a successful event celebrating local art, Eduardo found himself standing alone in the lobby, the hum of satisfied guests fading into the night. Luisa joined him, her smile warm and full of pride. They stood in comfortable silence, both taking in the transformation that had taken place. "You did it, Eduardo," she said softly. "The Horizonte is everything you dreamed it could be, and more." He looked at her, feeling a depth of gratitude and affection that went beyond words. "We did it," he replied, his voice filled with emotion. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." Their eyes met, and in that quiet moment, Eduardo understood that his journey had brought him not only a renewed sense of purpose, but a connection that ran deeper than he had ever expected. The bond he shared with Luisa had become a source of strength, a partnership built on shared values and mutual respect. As they stood together, Eduardo realized that the Horizonte's transformation was not just a testament to his commitment to the hotel. It was a reflection of the personal growth he had undergone, the man he had become. As the night settled over the Horizonte, Eduardo felt a profound sense of peace. His journey had taken him from a life bound by family expectations to a purpose he had forged on his own. He had faced betrayal, sacrifice, and uncertainty, yet through it all, he had found something lasting. The Horizonte was no longer just a part of the Alencar Empire. It was a legacy he had built with his own hands, a place that honored the values he held dear. With Luisa by his side and the hotel thriving under their shared vision, Eduardo looked forward to a future filled with possibility. He had found his path, not as the heir to a corporate empire, but as a man who had created a legacy of his own, one that was defined not by power or profit, but by the people and purpose that gave it life. The success of the Horizonte under Eduardo's independent leadership had turned the hotel into a beacon of community and culture in Madrid. The once quiet lobby now buzzed with activity as artists, musicians, and local business owners mingled with guests. Eduardo watched this transformation with pride. Yet he knew that one part of his life remained unresolved, the strained relationship with his family, particularly with his father. Despite the hotel's success, he hadn't heard from Miguel since he had invoked the clause to gain ownership. Their once close bond had become a distant echo, overshadowed by their opposing visions for the Alencar legacy. The opportunity for a final confrontation came unexpectedly. Sofia, his cousin, reached out with an invitation for Eduardo to attend a family gathering in honor of his father's birthday. She reassured him that, despite the tension, his father wanted him there. Eduardo hesitated, feeling the unresolved conflict lingering in his heart. But he realized that avoiding this moment would only prolong the rift between them. Determined to face his father and perhaps even find closure, Eduardo agreed to attend. When he arrived at the family estate, he was greeted by familiar faces, each carrying the weight of their shared history. The gathering was filled with warmth and laughter, a celebration that felt both comforting and bittersweet to Eduardo. As he made his way through the rooms, he exchanged polite nods and brief conversations with relatives who eyed him with curiosity, their expressions a mixture of admiration and skepticism. It was clear that his decision to claim the Horizonte had left an impression on the family, and while some respected his courage, others saw it as an act of rebellion. Eventually, Eduardo found himself alone with his father in the study, a room filled with the memorabilia of the Alencar family legacy. Miguel stood by the window, his back to Eduardo, his posture as rigid as his silence. Eduardo felt the weight of unspoken words pressing down on him, and he knew that this was his moment to address the distance that had grown between them. Summoning his courage, he began. I know that my decision to take ownership of the Horizonte wasn't what you wanted, but I couldn't ignore what I felt was right. I needed to build something that mattered to me. Miguel turned slowly, his expression unreadable. Eduardo, you walked away from the empire we built together. You chose a single hotel over the future of this family. Do you understand what that means? His father's words were sharp, laced with disappointment and the weight of legacy. But Eduardo met his gaze, his voice steady as he replied, I understand, but I also understand that legacy is more than just growth and expansion. The Horizonte taught me that our family's legacy can be about people, connection, and purpose. I didn't reject our future. I chose to honor it in a way that felt true to me. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Miguel's expression softened slightly, though his eyes still held a mixture of hurt and resignation. You've always been stubborn, Eduardo, just like your grandfather. Perhaps there is some merit in what you've done, even if I can't see it fully. It was the closest thing to an acceptance Eduardo had ever received from his father, and though it wasn't the reconciliation he had hoped for, it felt like a step toward understanding. They stood in silence, a fragile truce forming between them, bound by a shared love for the Alencar name, even if their visions differed. Leaving the family estate that night, Eduardo felt a sense of closure. He knew that he and his father might never fully reconcile, but he had taken his stand, and he was at peace with his choice. His path was his own, and while it had cost him his role within the Alencar Empire, it had given him a purpose he could believe in. For the first time, he felt free from the weight of expectations, ready to face the future he had built with his own hands. Returning to the Horizonte, Eduardo felt a renewed sense of purpose. He threw himself into the hotel's projects with vigor, each initiative further strengthening the bond between the hotel and the Madrid community. With Luisa by his side, they developed new programs that deepened the hotel's cultural engagement, hosting workshops, cultural exhibitions, and charity events that brought together locals and visitors. The Horizonte's reputation as a place of authentic connection grew, and Eduardo felt the satisfaction of creating a legacy that reflected his values. In the midst of this growth, Eduardo was approached by a prominent cultural foundation interested in partnering with the Horizonte. They proposed a collaboration that would make the hotel a flagship destination for cultural tourism, a move that would draw international attention and solidify its role as a cultural institution. Eduardo knew this partnership could provide the financial stability he needed without compromising the hotel's values. He discussed the opportunity with Luisa and the staff, and together they embraced the vision, seeing it as a way to expand the Horizonte's influence while remaining true to its mission. The partnership was announced with great fanfare, and the Horizonte became a symbol of luxury grounded in community and culture. The hotel's transformation under Eduardo's leadership garnered media attention, and soon people from all over the world visited not just for its luxury but for its soul, its connection to the spirit of Madrid. Eduardo watched as the Horizonte became everything he had dreamed it could be, a place that honored both its legacy and its future. One evening, after a particularly successful cultural event, Eduardo stood with Luisa on the rooftop terrace, gazing out over the city. The lights of Madrid sparkled below, and the hum of life filled the air, a symphony of everything he had come to love about the city and its people. Luisa looked at him, her smile warm and filled with pride. "You've done something incredible, Eduardo. The Horizonte is more than just a hotel now. It's a part of Madrid, and it's all because you believed in it." Eduardo took her hand, feeling the weight of her words and the gratitude that filled his heart. "I couldn't have done it without you, Luisa. You showed me what this place could be, what it truly means to create something meaningful." Their eyes met, and in that quiet moment, Eduardo felt the depth of their connection, a bond that had grown stronger through every challenge they had faced. The journey that had begun with a simple desire to escape had transformed into a shared purpose, a vision that had brought them together in ways he hadn't anticipated. With the Horizonte thriving and his place within it secure, Eduardo looked toward the future with a sense of fulfillment he had never known. He had found his purpose, not in the shadows of his family's expectations, but in the light of his own convictions. The hotel had become his legacy, a symbol of authenticity, community, and cultural pride. And as he stood beside Luisa, Eduardo knew that the life he had built was one he could embrace fully, a journey that had brought him not only a sense of purpose, but a profound connection to the people who had walked it with him. The moment of truth had passed, and Eduardo had emerged not as the heir to a corporate empire, but as a man who had crafted his own destiny, rooted in the values he held dear. The Horizonte was now more than a hotel. It was a testament to his journey, a legacy that would endure long after he was gone, a symbol of what could be achieved when one chose to honor the truth within. Years passed, and the Horizonte thrived as a symbol of luxury rooted in authenticity, a testament to Eduardo's vision. Under his leadership, the hotel had become a beloved landmark in Madrid, a place where locals and travelers alike gathered to experience the city's culture, art, and spirit. The once familiar walls were now adorned with artwork from local artists, each piece telling a story of Madrid's rich heritage. The lobby echoed with the laughter and conversation of guests who felt the warmth of the staff's care and the genuine hospitality that had become the Horizonte's hallmark. Eduardo's journey, from reluctant heir to devoted guardian, had transformed the hotel into a place of connection and meaning, a legacy he knew would endure. In the years following his decision to claim the Horizonte, Eduardo had watched as his vision took shape, each new initiative bringing the hotel closer to the community it served. The partnerships with local businesses and cultural organizations flourished, creating a network of support that sustained the hotel's unique identity. The Horizonte's events became a fixture in Madrid's social calendar, drawing visitors from around the world and strengthening its reputation as a cultural hub. Eduardo's gamble had paid off, and the hotel's success validated the path he had chosen. More importantly, it reminded him daily of the values he had built his life around: integrity, connection, and purpose. Eduardo's relationship with Luisa had deepened over time, evolving from a professional partnership into a life shared. Their love was marked by the quiet strength of two people who had walked through challenges together, building something greater than themselves. She had become his partner not only in business but in life, her passion and vision an endless source of inspiration. They had found in each other a bond that went beyond romance, a shared purpose and respect that had grown stronger with every victory and every hardship. As they worked side by side, they created a home within the Horizonte, a sanctuary that embodied both their dreams and their commitment to each other. The hotel had also become a place of refuge for Eduardo, a sanctuary from the demands of family expectations. Though his relationship with his father remained complex, they had found a fragile peace, an understanding built on mutual respect, even if their paths had diverged. Miguel had eventually acknowledged Eduardo's success, albeit reluctantly, recognizing that his son's vision had carved a new place for the Alencar name in the world. While they might never fully agree, Eduardo felt a sense of closure, knowing he had honored his family's legacy in his own way. The connection with his family had been reshaped, but it endured, marked by a newfound respect for Eduardo's commitment to authenticity. One afternoon, Eduardo found himself standing in the Horizonte's lobby, watching his guests and staff move through the space that had become a symbol of his journey. The hotel had grown beyond his wildest dreams, and each face he saw reminded him of the countless lives it had touched. As he watched a group of children laughing by the grand piano, he thought of his grandfather, the man who had built the Alencar Empire from humble beginnings. Eduardo felt a pang of nostalgia, a recognition of the legacy that had guided him, and he understood that his grandfather's values had always been a part of him, shaping his vision and the life he had created. Eduardo's thoughts were interrupted by Manuel, who approached with a gentle smile. "You've built something incredible here, Eduardo," he said, his voice filled with pride. "The Horizonte is more than just a hotel now. It's a home for all of us." Eduardo felt a surge of gratitude, his heart swelling with pride as he looked at the man who had stood by his side through every trial. "Thank you, Manuel. This place wouldn't be what it is without you, and everyone who brings it to life every day." They shared a warm handshake, a quiet understanding passing between them, a reflection of the journey they had walked together. The horizon stretched wide before Eduardo, filled with new possibilities. He and Luisa had dreams of expanding their vision, exploring ways to support local artists, perhaps even opening a gallery within the hotel to showcase the talent of Madrid's creative community. They envisioned workshops and mentorship programs that would allow the Horizonte to give back to the city that had embraced it. Eduardo saw the hotel not just as a place of luxury, but as a catalyst for positive change, a place where culture and community could flourish together. With each passing year, he found himself more committed to the legacy he had built, excited by the new horizons that awaited them. One evening, as Eduardo and Luisa stood on the rooftop terrace, watching the city lights spread out before them, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey that had begun as an escape from responsibility had transformed into a life of purpose, a commitment to a legacy that honored both his family's values and his own. The Horizonte had become a beacon of authenticity, a place that celebrated people over profit, connection over commerce. And as Eduardo looked at Luisa, he knew that this life they had built together was a testament to the power of shared vision, of dreams pursued with unwavering conviction. In the years to come, Eduardo would watch as the Horizonte continued to grow, each new guest, event, and initiative adding to its story. He had left a mark on the world, a legacy crafted from hard work, sacrifice, and a deep belief in the importance of human connection. And as he walked through the halls he knew so well, greeted by the familiar faces of those who shared his passion, he felt a peace that came from knowing he had created something lasting, something that would continue to inspire long after he was gone. The Horizonte had become Eduardo's gift to Madrid, a symbol of what could be achieved when one chose to build with purpose. It was a place where lives intertwined, where stories were shared, and where dreams took root. Eduardo knew that his journey had reached its culmination, not as the heir to a corporate empire, but as a man who had crafted his own path, a legacy bound not by wealth or power, but by the hearts and hands of those who made the Horizonte their own. With Luisa beside him and the city of Madrid as his witness, Eduardo looked forward to the future, to the new horizons that awaited him, secure in the knowledge that the life he had built was one of meaning and love. The Horizonte would stand as a testament to his journey, a place where others could find their own paths, inspired by the legacy he had created. A legacy rooted in authenticity, in community, and in the enduring beauty of a life lived with purpose. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the story. I'm sure the next video appearing on your screen will also move you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. A big kiss and see you in the next story.